now what I'm going to do is I'm going to illustrate to you how the secondary splash works, how it is formed, and how we follow it through. When this ball came and hit the water, it punctures the water surface. Okay? It punctures the water surface. By the second drawing, the ball has pushed farther into the water. It deaccelerates quickly because of the resistance of the water, but what it's doing is pushing a pocket of air. It's pushing a pocket of air down into the water surface. Okay? Now I'm going to keep these drawings quite light. I hope we can see them well enough. So what's happening here, the ball, okay? I love doing sound effects sometimes too. It's very helpful for me. The ball is pushing a pocket of water down underneath the surface. And I'm going to animate this straight ahead so you really see what's going on here. So this part of the splash is shooting upwards and outwards, and the ball is deaccelerating quickly as it pushes a pocket of air, opens up a pocket of air under the water. Okay? Now the interesting thing that happens is that because the surrounding water is very heavy, there's water pressure, this water wants to fill that air pocket. This air pocket that has been created by the object, piercing the surface. There's a lot of pressure coming from every side, and it wants to push that air back up to the surface. Okay? And that's what's going to happen in the subsequent drawings. The object that pierced the surface will continue to sink depending on its density and depending on its weight and depending how buoyant it is. And the water pressure is going to start pushing that big bubble of air back up to the surface. Okay? And it's going to start pushing in on the sides of that bubble of air. So you see this air, this is now, you see this air pocket, this is empty space, air, it's like a hole that's been punctured in the water surface. The ball continues to sink slowly, and this air pocket continues to get pushed together, and this is happening in a mere fraction of a second, of course. And what's going to happen is that this pocket of air, when it fills in, the force is so great, it's going to shoot a second splash up the center. Okay? And that happens very, very quickly. And creates what we call the secondary splash. The ball is still dragging some air with it. It will continue to drag some air with it, which will return to the surface as bubbles. But now we see this secondary splash beginning to happen. Okay? Now it's nice sometimes to work your secondary splash onto another level, onto a separate level of paper at first, just so you don't get too confused. You end up with a lot of objects. Yeah, you end up with a lot of objects on your piece of paper moving in different directions. So as the main body of the splash is reaching its apex and just about to start falling down, a secondary splash is being pushed up the center. It's being pushed up the center here as the weight and pressure of the surrounding water pushes that water bubble back up, fills in, and that water is forced up the middle. We call it a secondary splash. Sometimes we call it a jet. There are several different names for it. I'm going to very roughly draw the ball, which is deaccelerating, still carrying some bubbles and air down with it, but the majority of the air has been pushed back up, and the force of the water pushing it back up actually creates, and it kind of looks like a little geyser or something, but the water will come shooting up the center as it fills that pocket of air that was created. Okay? Now this is happening simultaneously. And the nice thing about this is that most of the splash has gone and it's slowing down. And just as it's slowing down, this other one comes shooting up the center. So you're getting overlapping action again, which is really, really nice to give your splash a really dynamic feeling. And again, exaggerate this secondary splash, comes shooting up the center. I'm going to shade it in here so that it's a little more clear and easy to read. Now I'm doing it on a separate layer of paper, but I will eventually integrate it in to the same drawing. Okay, boom. The ball is still falling very slowly, bubbles coming up from the ball. Now those are little details. I'm not going to go into too much detail with that right on this. I'm trying to stick with the main body of the splash, primary splash and secondary splash. Okay, boom. Now, important, something that I hadn't done is to number the secondary splash, so I'll know which drawing they coincide with. This one is working with drawing number 6. This one is working with drawing number 7. And I might even call it S for secondary. Now this is just a temporary measure because I will be, like I said, integrating these drawings with the main splash drawing. I am drawing them on a separate piece of paper now just to keep things simple for myself and for the viewer. So the secondary splash shoots up really fast. It's going to do the same thing as the primary splash. It's going to shoot up fast, hang, and then fall back down. Okay, so the first 3 drawings, again, quite fast, a lot of directional energy in them, but then as it will reach its apex, it will slow right down. Let's stick with the secondary splash here. There we go. Okay, I got it a little off kilter here. Again, I don't want it to shoot up perfectly straight and symmetrical. I'm going to try to make it a little asymmetrical, tilt it off to one side a little bit. You can have a lot of fun with secondary splashes. They create some really fun shapes as they shoot up. And there's some little drops that you can have different drops shooting up that will hang for different amounts of time. Again, any different overlapping actions that you can get into your animation, the better. Overlapping action rocks, it's cool, it looks good, it adds a lot of dynamic energy to your splash animation. Okay. So here's what we have so far for the secondary splash. It's coming, shooting up the center as the rest of the splash slows down. It comes flying up the center. Okay? I'm now going to do a little secondary splash animation, independent, completely independent of the rest of the splash, and I will then transpose it onto the main splash. Okay, I don't need to worry too much about the little details. I'll connect the dots a little bit later. What I'm going to do here is animate it at its apex of its trajectory, as high as it's going to get, just like I did with the other splash, except it has quite a different nature. It's more of a jet, almost looks like it was shot up out of a faucet or a hose. Now let's say that's its highest point, okay? And that would be S9. I'm going to circle it, call it a T. Okay, yeah, I'm going to change my mind. It's not going to be the highest trajectory point. This next drawing will be. I'm going to hang it up in the air here. So, it's hanging. And I'm actually just going to animate this one straight through. No timing charts, nothing. I'm going to give it some character. I'm going to make these pieces kind of twist and move at different rates. And this is something really you can have a lot of fun with. This might look a little whimsical and cartoony when I'm done, and that is really my intention. And because often secondary splashes are rather whimsical and funny to watch. So I'm really going to have at it with this one. Twist it in all various directions. Going out on a limb here, it might look a little funny, but I think it'll look nice. So just going to go with it. Maybe spreading it out a little more than necessary, but it will add character, I guarantee it. So it's going out, kind of twisting and falling, and then twisting, turning, churning, and then falling back towards the water's surface. I'll flip this in a minute here so you can see where it's all going. Okay. And make some kind of sense out of all these scribbles I'm putting out here. Hanging, stretching, falling back down. Yeah, I'm going to flip this a little bit so you get an idea of the elastic and fun nature of what I've done with this secondary splash. Kind of hangs there, but it's also twisting itself up, kind of contorting itself, having a little fun. If you don't add some life to your animation, it's not fun. I'm going to go ahead and number these. 10, 11, 12, and 13. And now I'm going to go back and transpose this secondary splash onto my primary splash. Okay, I'll go back to drawing number 5. If you'll remember, our pocket of air was not quite, was just getting pushed back up by the surrounding water pressure. And perhaps this bubble would just be starting to appear on the surface. It appears like a big bubble that then shoots up like a jet. This was my next drawing. As it shoots up the center. When I finally shoot this animation, you'll actually be able to see these arrows directing the motion of the splash as it plays out in real time. So what I'm going to do now is actually add this secondary splash to the primary splash. I'm going to draw it very lightly. It would be mostly concealed by the outside walls of the splash, and it's just coming up the center. It's starting to become visible. But I'm gonna rough it in here a little bit so you can see both. You can see both the primary splash and the secondary splash shooting up the center. I'm going to add the arrow details. This will help us visualize it. And and I'll rough in the ball and the other bubbles as well. It'll be helpful to see that when we look at the final animation. So there we have my original primary splash drawing with the secondary splash combined. And here's the next secondary splash. I put it behind the primary splash. Maybe do a little bit of erasing. And I'm going to add this secondary splash to my primary splash animation. And a directional arrow to show you what it's doing. Okay. And the ball and bubbles. Now the nice thing about this secondary splash as well, that as this primary splash is falling and this shoots up the center, the rest of the splash is kind of getting boring. It's over. It's falling and it's just going to disappear within less than a second. You have this nice new funny thing that comes shooting up the center and creates a whole new focus for us. Now drawing number 8 in the secondary splash sequence. And you can see it's becoming quite a lot more prominent. The primary splash is starting to fall away, and the secondary splash becomes the object of our focus because it's moving faster, because it's new, because it's fresh, and it catches our attention as it comes shooting up the center. Okay. Still shooting upward quite quickly. All the rest of this splash is starting to fall downwards, and so you get this piece shooting upwards up the center. Really catches your attention. It's a secondary movement, secondary action, opposing action. It's exciting, it's fun, and it's the way splashes work too. Now from here on in, I had just done these secondary splashes on their own sheet, but I numbered them so the corresponding numbers are all there. I have splash number 9 will correspond with my secondary splash number 9. And I can go ahead and just pencil it in. Again, you'll see I'm not being overly careful, cautious. I'm not trying to make really neat, pretty drawings. What I'm trying to do is animate a dynamic splash. And that is the name of the game, is dynamics. They call it fluid dynamics in the CGI world. Well, we're animating fluid dynamics by hand here, and dynamic is a really key word. I'm exaggerating the twist, turn, and kind of whimsical fancifulness of this secondary splash. Again, exaggeration, key part of what we do in this art form. And so I'm going to finish incorporating this secondary splash into my primary splash, and I'll come back when I've done some of that tedious work and we'll look at where we are with our splash.